Well, that's a tough act to follow right there. I should not have sat in the middle.
I told you. I told you.
And now you
Bad.
stand.
Bad. I'm going to stay seated unless I get a little fired up. I may stand up. My name is Louis Essig. Like she said, I don't have any fancy title. I'm not unique. I'm not special. I'm a person in recovery that made it out on the other side. I celebrated 7 years of sobriety on July 3rd, which is fantastic. Anytime I get a microphone in my hand or an opportunity to talk about this disease, I always share that it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter where you're from, who you are, how you were raised. It can happen to anybody. I grew up in a nice suburban community. Grandview Heights is where I grew up. Didn't really want or need for anything growing up. Nothing out of the ordinary. However, my mother died of an overdose 3 years ago as a direct result of this disease. Her father died of cirrhosis of the liver. I'm in recovery. My sister's in recovery. So it's safe to say it runs in my family. And it is genetic, and I know that. Like I said, I had a normal upbringing. I think the first information I got about drugs and alcohol was the DARE program. I don't know if you guys remember DARE.
Makes me feel
And-
old. Thank
yeah.
you, Louis. Appreciate it.
And so it was like fifth grade. I mean, you're a kid. They come in, they tell you just say no. I'm like, oh, all right, like just say no, got it. And the only thing I took away from DARE was that if I abused alcohol or I used drugs, it was going to ruin my life, and there were going to be immediate consequences. And so, I mean, quite frankly, I was terrified of drugs and alcohol growing up. Up until my sophomore year, when in high school, when my friends would go out to a party on the weekend, and they'd come back to school Monday, and they'd take their tests, and they'd go to practice, and they'd play sports. And I was like, where are those consequences? I don't see them. You told me there are going to be immediate consequences. This must be okay. And so I went out to a party, and I had a drink and partook in some other things, and I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. It felt like the world opened up to me. I went back to school Monday. I felt popular. I could talk to girls. I mean, it was fantastic. There's no sense in me telling you otherwise. I enjoyed some of that time. It was fun until it wasn't. That's what they say. 2008, 2009, for those of you who were in it or around it, pill mills were really popular down in Florida. Oxycontin was extremely popular, and I started to dabble in that the summer before I went to college. Went down to OU, and the thing is, like, I still had no consequences up to that point. I was doing the things I was doing. By the time I got to OU, I was a professional alcoholic drug addict, and I learned that in Grandview Heights. I mean, it's a great community, but this happens everywhere. Got down to OU. I lasted 2 semesters. I dropped out, came back home to Columbus because I couldn't do it. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know who I was. I just wanted to come home and use and drink. And that's what I did. I came back home. I used and I drank. And eventually I would lose my job. I got a job at Five Guys, got fired. I lost the apartment, lost my girlfriend. We had a dog. His name was Turbo. She took Turbo from me. No car. And I moved back home with mom and dad. And I remember there was a buddy of mine who he was in recovery at the time. He had 6 months sober. I grew up with him. He since has unfortunately passed away from an overdose. But in that time, he said, "Hey, come with me to this recovery meeting." And I said, "Okay, great. Yeah, I'll go with you. You know, I want to kill some time. Let me check this out." Wasn't super interested in stopping, but it couldn't hurt to go. And I listened to a guy kind of like myself tell his story, and it was very similar. However, he had not run into legal issues. Or I'm sorry, I had not, and he had, and I went up to him and I shared with him, "Hey man, great story, but I haven't had legal issues yet." And he looked at me and he said, "Keep doing what you're doing. It'll come." And it did. It did. And, again, I say I'm not unique because I'm not. I'd get arrested, I'd go in, I'd do a week, I'd get out, I'd get high. I'd go in, I'd do a month, just revolving door. There was no stopping it. And eventually I wound up in front of a judge, and she threatened me a little bit. She was like, "Well, listen, we're going to put you on probation for these felonies, but if you violate, I'm going to send you to prison for the maximum amount of time possible." And I went back to that holding cell behind the courtroom, and I was like, "Oh, God, that does not sound like fun." I I got to find my way out of this one. Because I knew I was going to screw up. I've proven to myself time and time again, you're going to put me on probation. Yeah, I'm going to get out and I'm going to violate. It's what's going to happen. Yeah, it's what happens. We know what happens. So I went to my public defender. I was like, hey, man, is there any way you could get me some help? Like, is there any, like, rehab or something other than this probation prison deal? Because I knew it was coming. And so I was placed in a special docket drug court program called Ties Court under Judge McIntosh, and I am forever grateful for the things that they did for me. I mean, they essentially taught me how to live my life and walk again. I got in that program, and I was not very willing to participate at first. I didn't have that rigorous honesty. I wasn't willing to go to any lengths. I was signing my slips and the whole deal.
You learned how to sign them yourself?
Yes. And so naturally, you can guess what happened next. I would relapse and I would violate, and they actually sent me to CBCF. So I'm glad to see my home team. I'm glad to see my home team over here. That was in 2016. I went to jail sober for the first time. I ended up freaking out when they threatened me with CBCF, and I went to my sponsor, and I was like, I'll do anything to stay sober. And I did. I did. And I went to CBCF, and, I took that program as seriously as I could. I took the things I could use. I didn't complain about it. I knew I needed recovery. I went to the meetings every night, AOD classes I participated in. And I just started to take things seriously. And I think most importantly, I started to realize that I didn't have all the answers. I had run out of solutions. And listen, the addict alcoholic I'm the smartest guy in the room. I can think my way out of anything. I can maneuver my way out of anything. And it wasn't until I realized that was not the case that I started to get better. And I'll tell you a little bit about what my life is like today. So after CBCF, I got out. I participated in Ties Court. I did everything they had told me to do. And I worked in the restaurant industry. I did that for a number of years. I worked my way up. I ended up being a manager at a nice fine dining establishment in Arlington. The money was really good. And then COVID happened in 2020. And so I went to work one night and I didn't have a job. And somebody that has a record like myself, it's fairly lengthy with a couple of felonies. It's not always easy to find a job. And so I went back to the Ties Court, the judge, Marquita Clay, the coordinator. And I said, hey, you think I could work at CBCF? And they wrote me a reference letter. I went and applied, and I ended up getting a job at CBCF. It was a lot of fun. I did a lot of I ended up sitting on a panel with Judge McIntosh. I speak in the schools. I speak to 10th grade students at Grandview now. If you had come to me, the best way I can describe it, if you had come to me in that cell in my room at CBCF and said, hey, write down what you want out of recovery. Write everything down that you want. I would have sold myself short times 1,000 because all I wanted was maybe a place to live, a decent job, my license back, a car, the basics, a girlfriend. I just wanted a normal life. And I got way, way more than that. Like I said, I worked at CBCF. I worked my way up into leadership management. I actually ran the unit I used to live on for a while, which was strange, but I really enjoyed it. Nowadays, I work for BBI Logistics, like you said, a job I never thought I had. I'm one of 2 felons in the office. I look at things like that and say, hey, if they notice that I'm doing well, that helps the next person. That's right. It will give the next person an opportunity to get a job. And so it's that day-to-day stuff, you know what I mean? They give me a shot. Well, it's not just about me. That's right. Hopefully they give someone else a shot down the road. Mm-hmm. That's my story, I guess. Like I said, nothing special, but I got the girlfriend.